afternoon, good day, good morning. Welcome everyone to Pathway to 17 Summit. You are at the FinTech Inclusion Effect session, and I'm here with my guest speakers. My name is Tariro, Nyimo, and I am the Certified Digital Practitioner Program Lead, as well as Deputy Divisional Director for DFI. I'm here with my guests. I'm here with Nithyasri Sharma, and I will introduce Nidhi. Nithyasri Sharma is a manager for strategy at Women's World Banking. She is a seasoned strategy professional focused on inclusive finance, fintech strategy, and digital innovation. She currently leads the strategy function at Women's World Banking, where she's responsible for driving the development and implementation of the organization's strategic plan to reach 100 million women, as well as country strategies in each of the organization's key priority markets. She also has expertise in human-centered research and product design for inclusive finance institutions, from banks to fintechs across digital credit, savings, and mobile payments. Welcome, Nithyasri.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you. And now I'll introduce Chris Czerwonka, my second guest speaker. Chris Czerwonka is CEO and co-founder of Mosabi, a platform combining fintech and edtech with AI-driven business and finance upskilling for Africa's grassroots entrepreneurs. Chris has spent a decade immersed in financial inclusion, fintech, and MSME capacity building in sub-Saharan Africa, and has worked with companies such as Amarante Consulting, UNCDF, and the World Bank, and other actors on digital financial services, customer experience, client capacity, and economic empowerment. He serves on the steering committees for Financial Inclusion Forum Africa and Action FinTech Protects Working Group. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you both. And I know I summarized your experience because of time. I am quite excited about this session, and I'll just move straight into it. So I'll start with you, Nithya, right? Please just tell us a little bit more about Women's World Banking and the annual Innovation FinTech Challenge, and possibly some insights into the setbacks we had in 2020 due to COVID, and what fintechs should have learned, or the lessons that they should learn from that.
Absolutely. So again, thanks for having us, and it's great to be here with both you and Chris. So Women's World Banking has been around for over 40 years. We were founded in 1979, and we are a global NGO devoted to driving financial inclusion for low-income women. So access and engagement with financial services, believing that ultimately this is what results in women's security, prosperity, and economic empowerment. So at the end of the day, our mission is about women's economic empowerment through financial inclusion. And we do that in a myriad of different ways. So when you hear about us, we are tackling this problem from many different angles. Number one is our technical advisory, our strategic advisory services to financial service providers. So this is where we actually work with financial service providers to help them design and deploy products using our human-centered design approach that better serve women clients. We do research. We also do policy work. So we're increasingly working with key regulators, really believing that there are some systemic and foundational changes in the ecosystem that need to happen in order for it to be easier for women to, again, accessing these financial services. We also engage in leadership and gender diversity training for high potential women leaders at the regulatory level, really, again, believing that if we can build the capacity and strength of women leaders within these organizations, they can then have the capabilities to better serve women clients. We also have a private equity investment fund. So we're also, as I like to call it, putting our money where our mouth is, believing that investing in gender inclusive institutions is the way to generate profitable market returns for our investors, right? So we have this gender lens inclusive strategy that we believe that by investing in women, both as leaders and as customers, is how we can then, generate returns. So at the end of the day, we believe that serving women is not just the right thing to do, which it absolutely is, but it's also the smart thing to do, right? We are here to make the business case that you are leaving half the market behind if you're not considering women as you design and deploy your financial services. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. As part of that, in 2019, we launched the FinTech Innovation Challenge, which was really meant to identify and elevate FinTech companies that are taking that gender lens inclusive approach, right? And so for us, we believe that at the end of the day, financial inclusion is not about, waving a pink card and putting, women on it, right? It's really about breaking down those barriers, those unique barriers and challenges that women have, and understanding those and breaking those down so that you can be more inclusive. And our research over 40 years has shown that if you take that inclusive approach, you're actually helping include everyone. So we're never here to say that our products or the work that we do have to be exclusively for women. All we're saying is, hey, take a step back, think about the 50% of the market that have certain unique barriers and challenges. And by doing that, you're actually breaking down, you're actually going to be able to include more of the market. Men can be included as well. And so that's the approach that we want to take, with FinTechs, especially as we see the rise of digital finance, we see the rise of all these sort of new technologies, disruptive technologies. We want to make sure that gender is incorporated and that women don't get left behind. So, segueing into sort of the second part of your question around, what are the challenges that we've seen since COVID? Obviously, COVID has been a challenge for all of us, but I've actually seen a bit of a bright spot, right? Because COVID actually forced the adoption of digital technology perhaps quicker than we anticipated, right? We've always seen, especially, and I'm always talking about our segment, right? When we think about the low income segment, and that's always been a challenge, again, how do you get them to trust and adopt digital technology? COVID sort of forced that to happen during lockdowns when you couldn't go out and interact with your, with your branch or your agent. You had to kind of speed up the adoption of digital technology. And so this is the moment, this is the time when we want to make sure that those women who were captured and brought into the system during the pandemic continue to get use and continue to benefit from the digital financial services they have. So that's sort of the impetus behind the FinTech Innovation Challenge, to identify and elevate these disruptive technologies. Of course, I know, Chris, you're going to talk about Mosabi, but just, a shout out that, Mosabi was one of our finalists this year in the challenge. And so again, really great work that we're seeing, and we want to give them that platform to share their work and hopefully inspire more disruptive technologies to come in and serve women. One of the other things that we did this year in 2021 is also introduce a female founder award, right? Because I think one of the other things that we believe at Women's World Banking is that if you have a more gender inclusive institution, as an organization, if you're more gender inclusive, you are going to be more inclusive with your customer base, i.e. for us, that means, more inclusive of women customers. And so, that's, again, as I talked about the leadership programs that we've been running for many years, this year we wanted to take that stake and say, look, we know that there are challenges in elevating women leaders in FinTech, right? We've always heard these challenges of, there's not enough women in tech, we can't find these women, women have challenges getting investments, women founders, have challenges getting investments. And we want to kind of dispel those myths, right? The women founders are there. They are doing amazing things. And again, we wanted to offer that platform through the Female Founder Award to really highlight those women founders that are living those values and permeating gender inclusivity within their organization. So those are a couple of the things that we shifted this year. And again, the theme right now is about resilience and recovery, right? We're all about, how do we help these women customers at the end of the day, but also women founders, right? How do we help them continue to be resilient and grow their companies as female founders, but then, how do we help women at the end of the day be resilient to these kind of economic shocks that happen? Because this isn't going to be the first one, right? There may be more, pandemics in the future. Climate change, that's the next big event on the horizon. Not even on the horizon, it's already here. That we need to pay attention to in terms of how is it affecting low-income women, and what can we do to help them continue to build that resilience, so that they have those safety nets, they have those protections to mitigate against such shocks going forward. So I know we're short on time, so I'll stop there for now, but I'm sure we'll get into more discussion going forward.
Nithya, thank you so much. I think you spoke about a lot of interesting things there, from investments to leadership to designing products that are relevant to low-income women. So I'll move to Chris Czerwonka. And Chris, I want you to give us more information about Mosabi and how innovative it is. And with your experience in Sub-Saharan Africa or on the African continent, what you have learned about low-income women or vulnerable or informal traders. You can share with us those trends.
Thanks, Tariro. And yeah, thank you, Nitya. It was very great to hear your background with Women's World Banking. It's a good segue to some of the things that I can talk about with Mosabi, our origin story, and why we've chosen to serve low-income women and other underserved grassroots entrepreneurs in Africa, and try, as you said, to have some innovation that can make a difference in their lives. A few things that Nitya said jumped out. Of course, Mosabi, we were really grateful to be one of the finalists for the Women's World Banking FinTech Innovation Challenge this year, and we're joined in that group by some other very innovative companies as well. Hearing as well about how that Women's World Banking organized the challenge as a result of their sort of key strategies and mandates, and how it folded nicely in to helping members of their network do human-centered design, to innovate, to build new technologies, new approaches, and integrate inclusive approaches into their operations, their products, and the way they help build better opportunities. We certainly see ourselves as falling into that category. And really, now having worked on Mosabi for a couple of years, you gave a great introduction at the onset of what we're doing. We are looking at ourselves as combining fintech as well as edtech, because we're really a skilling and knowledge building platform for the clients, for the demand side of financial inclusion, to help boost their engagement with products, with providers, so that they result in more holistic and value-driving financial health outcomes. And to pick up on another thing that Nitya said, really thinking about that business case for serving women or for boosting underserved client financial health. That's why we're building Mosabi, really. And it does come from this decade that I've spent immersed in African financial inclusion. But even going back before that, I spent 10 years in the financial sector of North America and Europe. I was working in consulting for corporate clients across that experience, as well as then over the last decade working with microfinance networks and organizations in product design and in trying to bring innovation and digitization. There was always this consistent rallying cry from among providers, from among people trying to do things in the sector. There's gaps in financial literacy, financial capacity, right? Where it's just often a commensurate condition that many of the clients targeted by inclusive finance have had those factors of exclusion, not only when it comes to capital, but when it comes to education and building skills and having the knowledge and capacity to engage with financial providers, make choices from among them, find the products that fit them best and that are client-centric and that are bringing about positive outcomes rather than over-indebtedness, or rather than being other types of products that maybe don't make the best sense for them. So we thought we could serve a place by building a digital platform to build that knowledge, build those skills, essentially be a digital coach in the pocket of grassroots Africans to help guide them through those decisions and in using those products and engaging with them better. So I think that inspiration comes from the body of work that Women's World Banking and others have been doing in the sector for some time. We're trying this newer approach. We are not explicitly a platform only for women. However, we have taken some of those approaches that Nitya talked about, where when we did find over time that if you design and build around the value proposition for women, really examining the conditions and experiences, financial lives and challenges that women face, and you design and build products for them that serve that context, you can help bridge some really important gender gaps in terms of financial and platform access. And you can also critically make better business cases for products, because when it comes down to it, I think as we've all seen in some of the research that's been out there in recent years, women are good customers. If you target them, they're more loyal customers to financial products often. Women are also very, very, have a lot of ingenuity and intelligence and creativity when solving for problems and facing challenges in their lives and building business activities when they're provided the right tools at the right time. So that building that business case and building digital innovations around it really serves well to help financial products get better traction, differentiate from among other products in crowded and saturated markets sometimes, and certainly can build an impetus for growth too in products that help bridge financial exclusion to serve unbanked or underbanked clients. It's a lever for growth for institutions and for products. So I think that's the key where we've been working for a couple of years now, is that thinking about micro to small businesses, informal, market-based grassroots entrepreneurs, and by and large, the women who are having opportunities to build financial lives in those roles, targeting and serving and having client-centric approaches for those segments makes good business sense and drives about great impact outcomes that have broader, far-reaching impacts that can be driven in households and in communities and in overall economies. So I'll pause there. And again, I know we're tight on time, so I want to be respectful and keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Chris. And before we move to gender gaps, which I want Nithya to tell us more about, I just wanted to find out from you, and I know your solution uses some AI, you've invested in artificial intelligence. How that has been in your experience?
Yeah, I think as we were building Mosabi and as I've talked to other entrepreneurs building solutions that do take specific design considerations for women, part of what we've done is overcome some myths that have been out there in the market, right? That men and women are the same, that they consume finance and technology the same. That's certainly a myth. It's a myth that, you know, as Nitya said, that all we need to do is to bring a pink or feminized approach and that'll solve everything. It's really about more holistic value propositions. And the other really important myth that get at what you're asking with approaches for AI and the opportunity there is that, there's not the business case. As I've said, that's really not the case at all. And foundationally, that there's no data on gender that helps make all of these decisions and design products better. In fact, banks and financial providers and technology providers are really well placed to harness very insightful data about how to segment from among women, how to provide products and information as Mosabi does at the right place at the right time, and really drive about those better business and impact outcomes. So when that data is there, it's accessible and it's insightful, and we can build it into our products, then that's a real opportunity to build out data-informed, data-driven approaches so that products are building algorithmic approaches to better serve and provide for women's needs. Those algorithms, when they take into account that data segmentation, when they take into account overcoming these other myths I've talked about, they can be more insightful and more outcome driven in terms of changes to products, et cetera. And they can overcome bias as well, right? That's an issue in terms of AI-driven technologies, is that historically there is a fair amount of gender bias in these algorithms. So I think that's what I'd underscore about the opportunity for AI in gender intelligent technology platforms and innovations.
Thank you, Chris. Such amazing points. And I'm moving on to Nithya. Nithya, I think that an earlier conversation I had with Yasmin, she talked about gender gaps and she focused on access to accounts with the formal institution. Now, I want to understand from a women's world banking point of view, what sort of gaps are you targeting? Are you intentionally targeting that are within your strategic plan and within your regions? Tell us about the gender gaps that worry women's world banking.
Absolutely. So we're doing this at 3 different levels, right? So let me start at the top, right? So there are certain, as I said, foundational or ecosystem gaps that we know are holding back access to finance for everybody, but particularly for women. These are things like identification. If women don't even have a birth certificate, if girls don't have a birth certificate, then they're not recognized as people, and they don't have access to the services that they need to. KYC, know your customer requirements. How can you make those easier so that it's easier to open an account, easier to access an account? So that's at the top, we're tackling some of these sort of foundational structural ecosystem. Now it's about access to digital, right? How do you get everybody access to internet, access to phones, access to broadband technology, that kind of thing. Then we're tackling, at the financial institution level. And I think Chris kind of highlighted a lot of the stuff that we're saying, they don't, or that we see, right? So they don't, financial institutions don't see the business case. They have biases that are preconceived about the behavior of their women customers. So when we go in and as Chris said, we show them their own data and we say, hey, look, your women customers are actually better borrowers. They are actually saving more. It's a bit of an eye opener, right? So I think Chris talked a little bit about sort of the those institutional barriers. Then it comes down to, what are the barriers at the demand level or at the women customer level, right? And these are, I want to break it down into 2 different types of barriers, right? So number one, you have sort of the traditional barriers of access, right? Women are often in the rural areas where social norms may restrict their mobility, right? They may not be able to go out of their house, whether it's a social norm issue or whether it's a distance issue. They can't afford to spend all day on a bus to get to the nearest town to deposit, a small amount of money, come all the way back. The bus fare might actually be more than the money that they actually want to deposit, right? So, issues of access and mobility. Digital can break those down, right? If you can implement digital finance and digital technology to break down some of those barriers of access, mobility, that can make a huge difference. But then you still have persisting barriers around trust, around education. So, that's sort of, why we love Mosabi and what stood out to us about that model of the ed tech, FinTech, because, it is about education, right? It is about building those digital and financial literacy, financial capabilities so that women feel confident, that they, want, or that they can use those services. And so breaking down those barriers, and digital creates a lot of anxiety. I mean, think about when we started using digital, right? In sort of where we are. I remember when I first started using mobile banking, was like, wait, you're really telling me that I can put a code or do something and my money suddenly goes somewhere? I had those types of anxieties, right? And so imagine, tenfold, looking at a low-income woman, maybe she's an entrepreneur, she has a small amount of income, mostly informal income, asking her to trust digital technology, it's going to take some time. And so those are the types of things that you want to now start overcoming. And that's what we are really trying to think about in the design of our solutions, is how do you build that trust? How do you build that confidence and those capabilities so that she can adopt digital technology, and the other barriers of mobility and access and all of those things will follow.
Thank you, Nithya. And I know, making a payment is magic. So it's not necessarily just low-income women or vulnerable women who think it's magic. Yeah. And I know you touched a little bit on social norms. There's a question here from our audience, from Elizabeth. And she's asking about how do they actually affect capital investments or access to those kind of investments, social norms?
So I want to understand the question. So social norms affecting capital in investments, or investments in women entrepreneurs?
I think it's a little bit of both from Liz.
Okay.
So she's saying, what is your take on social norms and how they affect the gender gap? Do they affect access to capital or investments for women founders?
Okay, access to capital for women founders. I think they do play a role, right? I think we do see all of these things kind of playing a role when it comes to access to capital for women founders. But I think the bigger barrier for women founders in terms of access to capital is simply just getting in the room. Right, we were sort of having a pre-chat, before we logged onto this about, women are sometimes, nervous about putting themselves out there, or, they may not, again, it's that confidence, right? There's a statistic out there that, women wait until they have 100% of the qualifications before they apply for a certain position or funding or access to capital, and men may wait until they have 60%, right? And so it's about, again, making sure that you build that confidence in women and provide them that training so that you are overcoming, those social barriers and social norms. The other thing is the data, again, bears it out, right? I think there's a BCG statistic that says women get half the investment capital, but they produce twice the revenue in fintechs, right? Women founders who, are founding fintechs are generating twice the revenue as male founders, but they're receiving half the capital. So think about that. With half as much money, they're doing twice as more, right? So when you show data like that, those are the ways that you can battle or combat some of these social norms and perhaps sway people to understand that, look, this is what the data is saying. Sorry, Chris, I know you want to jump in here, so I'll let you jump in.
I would love to just piggyback off of what I think was a really important point you said about what the data is bearing out. And I think that applies not only to, women founders of more sort of established companies, but also at the micro and grassroots level to women entrepreneurs and how they're connecting with financial products and capital. And, as you and others are well aware and have, contributed to the thought leadership and body of evidence out there, women are good customers when it comes to credit products. Even at the micro level, they, in almost all different country contexts, they repay at a higher rate than men do, and have a lower default rate on microloans, for instance, than men. However, when you talk to women users, there is often a propensity to avoid credit sometimes. So like with Mosabi, we're prompting our users to match when appropriate with available microloan providers in their areas. Of course, that's if they they register their interest and consent to share their data to have that opportunity. But often women, to a greater degree, are avoiding credit products, right? And maybe they don't want to become indebted, and that's that's certainly a choice that works for many. But in terms of trends of other fintech products that are coming to fill that market, there's a big movement in buy now, pay later fintechs that are, instead of extending disbursements of lump sum microloans, it's a payment over time method, right? So that's a bit of a product design that's aligned with that social norm that happens to be evident among segments of female consumers. There are products designed then around that. And therefore, again, the data insights that we harness around that and about serving women and finding the best fit for products can take that into account. So yeah, I think those were really great points.
Those are really great points. And I think we are running out of time. But just to say, Nithya, I'm not surprised that women who still, even if they receive less investment, they do twice as much in revenue. I know a lot of women who are like that. So that's not surprising. And thank you, Chris, for everything that you shared. Thank you to my guest speakers for sharing a lot of insights, especially on product design, on investments, on the different gender gaps. And I would have liked to get this conversation to be longer and maybe had a deep dive into all of those issues. But I think we are running out of time, and I will end the session and say thank you. Thank you to Pathway to 17. Thank you to Digital Frontiers Institute. And thank you to the Alliance of Digital Financial Practitioners.
Tariro, if I may just leave you guys with a quote from one of our customer research that we did in Kenya many years ago. Women don't need to be treated differently. This woman told us, she's an entrepreneur, she said, treat me like the boss I am, right?
Sure.
So,
the boss that I am.
So when we think about gender inclusivity, again, the message, I think, Chris, I hope I speak for you as well. We want to leave you with, women don't need to be treated differently. They just need you to break down those barriers and challenges so that they can take part in the inclusive financial ecosystem. So treat her like the boss she is.
Yes, thank you very much. And with that, we say goodbye.